Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from London. I'm Ollie Barrett, and coming up we've got the top stories this hour. We'll start with the headlines. Hong Kong University dismantles a Tiananmen Square statue commemorating those killed by Chinese troops in 1989. Chinese officials say there is a high probability of COVID-19 outbreaks inside the Winter Olympics bubble, but insist they've drawn up emergency plans. China shuts down a major city in a bid to extinguish a COVID-19 outbreak and chase its zero-case goal. The epicenter of the Omicron outbreak in South Africa's Gauteng province passes its peak a month after the variant was first detected there. And the Belgian government reaches a deal on a nuclear exit in which all existing nuclear power plants will close in 2025. A famous statue marking the Tiananmen Square massacre has been removed from the University of Hong Kong. The statue was dismantled in an overnight operation inside what is Hong Kong's oldest university. The 8-metre-high sculpture, known as the Pillar of Shame, commemorates the pro-democracy protesters killed by Chinese authorities in 1989. It was installed on the university campus in 1997, the year Hong Kong was handed back to China by the United Kingdom. It had been seen as an illustration of Hong Kong's freedoms compared to the Chinese mainland. The events at Tiananmen are heavily censored in China, and commemorating Tiananmen's become effectively illegal now in Hong Kong as well. The statue was created by Danish sculptor Jens Galschiot, who's expressed shock at the move and says he will claim compensation for any damage to the sculpture. Meanwhile, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam is on a visit to Beijing this week, where she will deliver an annual briefing to Chinese leaders. President Xi Jinping has strongly endorsed the recent election held in Hong Kong, saying the former British colony has transformed from chaos to order. Xi has also praised Carrie Lam's work in the city.
前面欢迎你来京述职。1年来，香港由乱到治的局面不断巩固，局势不断向好发展。新冠肺炎疫情防控成效明显，经济逐步复苏。 社会保持安定。
Moving on to the latest on COVID-19, and China has now imposed a partial lockdown in the northern city of Xi'an. All 13 million residents of the city have been ordered to stay at home unless they have a pressing reason to go out. The order comes a day after the city began testing all of its 13 million residents. Authorities have halted transportation to and from the city to prevent further transmission of the virus. Large-scale meetings, including activities in outdoor parks, have also been suspended until further notice. Only one person from each household will be allowed to go out for groceries every 2 days. New restrictions were imposed after Xi'an reported 52 coronavirus cases. bringing the total number of cases to 143. The latest measures have triggered panic buying among Sung residents, and it comes just weeks before the country hosts the Winter Olympic Games. Chinese Olympic officials are warning of probable COVID outbreaks inside the Olympic bubble due to the large number of foreign arrivals due.
特别是奥密克戎等变异毒株的传播，给全球疫情带来了极大的不确定性。冬奥赛时将有大量不同国家和地区的涉奥人员来华，人流聚集增加，出现一定数量的阳性病例，将成为大概率的事件。
The southern city of Dongqing on Tuesday ordered its 200,000 residents to isolate at home after an infection was detected. And our correspondent Patrick Fock has sent us more details from Beijing.
Well, authorities do seem to be taking a particularly tough approach to what's happening in Xi'an. There have been clusters that have emerged in different parts of the country in recent months, but Xi'an is going into a full lockdown. People are being told to stay at home, and only one person per household will be able to leave every couple of days, and only for buying real necessities. That may be partly because of the timing. We're only about 40 days away from the Winter Olympic Games now, and it may be partly to do with the proximity of Xi'an to Beijing. Xi'an's only a couple of hours away from the capital by flight, but certainly some very tough restrictions coming into play there for the time being. Organisers for the Beijing Olympics have talked about the need to continuously monitor the situation and make adjustments in the final stretch in the lead-up to the Games. So one would imagine that we could see some even tighter restrictions in the final days and weeks in the lead-up to the Games.
The United Kingdom has hit a new record of over 100,000 COVID-19 cases in a single day. The Christmas season has been shrouded in uncertainty here because of the spread of the Omicron variant. Despite the high number of cases recorded over the past 7 days, the government has decided not to put new restrictions in place for Christmas. A total of 301 COVID-19 admissions have been recorded in London on the 20th of December. That marks an increase of 78% week on week, and also the highest number of hospitalisations recorded in a single day since the 7th of February. But two new UK studies suggest Omicron will cause fewer hospitalisations here per case than previous variants. That's raised new hopes that no restrictions will be announced in England even after Christmas. The UK is also giving booster vaccine doses to nearly 1 million people a day. Our London correspondent Laura Macon-Isherwood has sent us an update.
Well, we know that the Prime Minister Boris Johnson was keen not to take Christmas away from people in the United Kingdom this year after last year's last-minute lockdown that was brought in meant many people were away from their friends and families on Christmas Day. And he said explicitly that no new restrictions will be brought in England, at least before Christmas Day here, again, despite those rocketing number of COVID-19 infections that have been recorded. As you said, more than 100,000 new cases were recorded yesterday on Wednesday. That's the highest daily total that we've seen since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. But research from both UK and South African scientists seem to suggest that even if you do catch the new variant of COVID-19, that Omicron variant, then it's less likely to be a severe illness as a result of that than previous variants, including the Delta variant, which of course was responsible for those huge waves across the world most recently. Now, whether or not this is going to cause problems moving forward isn't yet clear. That's what scientists and the government are looking at. They say they're monitoring the data hour by hour, day by day, but they are encouraging people to keep taking lateral flow tests to really see if you are at a high risk of passing on that virus or having it. It's not, as clear as taking a PCR, but at least it offers some sense as to whether or not someone is infectious. And so the Prime Minister Boris Johnson says take one of those before you head over to see friends and family this year, just to try to keep the spread at bay. Here in the UK, of course, there's been a big focus on that booster programme, offering up more protection to people, boosting people's immune systems to give them the best chance possible to fight off any infection from coronavirus. We know that here in the UK, almost 1 million doses of that third booster shot were given out on Tuesday, so that's quite a huge number there. And people have been really trying to push people through those centres, reducing the amount of time that people need to wait after having that third dose as well, to try to get more people through those centres. And it's resulted in more than 50% of the UK population that's eligible for that booster dose now being fully maximised in terms of their number of jabs, with those total of 3. Across Europe, though, like you say, there has been a little bit more resistance, and when lockdowns are being brought in, there has been a lot of protesting against those restrictions. However, governments are saying that they need those booster shots, including talking about even mandating it to try to make it a legal requirement for people to take those extra vaccine doses. That, of course, is up to those governments to decide. There have been multiple extra restrictions brought in across the likes of Portugal, Germany, and elsewhere across the bloc to try to keep this new wave at bay there as well. But ultimately, here in the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson says boosters are the way forward, and he's encouraging everyone who is eligible to get one.
The United States has authorised Pfizer's anti-COVID pill for people aged 12 or above who are at high risk. It's called Paxlovid and comprises 2 types of tablets. Unlike vaccines, the COVID pill doesn't target the spike protein of coronavirus. A clinical trial shows the pill helps reduce the risk of hospitalisation and death among at-risk people by 88%. A recent US surge in infections is largely driven by the Omicron variant, which has threatened the holiday plans of many Americans. Many are also struggling to find COVID-19 tests. In a statement, US President Joe Biden said the development is a testament to the power of science and the result of American innovation and ingenuity. He has promised to invoke a law to help Pfizer ramp up production of the pill quickly. The US has spent $5.3 billion in procuring 10 million courses of the treatment. The first 265,000 doses will be delivered in January 2022. Last week, the European Union's drug regulator allowed member states to use Pfizer's COVID treatment ahead of formal approval. According to data released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, around 150,000 new cases are confirmed in the US, 7,800 people are being hospitalised, and 1,200 are dying every day. The Omicron variant of the coronavirus represents approximately 73% of cases across the US at the latest count, and is as high as 90% in some areas. The Omicron variant is gaining pace across India as well. The total number of confirmed Omicron cases in India today stands at just 269. The emergence has been reported across 16 states and union territories, with Maharashtra and Delhi recording the most numbers of cases. Out of the recorded 269 cases of the Omicron variant, 104 people have recovered. Prime Minister Modi will hold a meeting later to review the COVID-19 situation in the country. The Prime Minister is expected to address concerns around booster doses of the COVID vaccines. The surge has put the centre in a high state of alert. The Union Health Secretary has written to the Chief Secretaries of States and Union Territories. With claims of Omicron being at least 3 times more transmissible than the Delta variant, the centre is asking states to be prepared for the worst and has prompted containment action at local and district levels. The letter encourages district officials to impose a nighttime curfew, strictly regulate large gatherings, and curtail numbers of marriages and funerals, or curtail numbers at marriages and funerals as and when required. In the last day, India reported a total of over 7,400 new COVID cases. The active caseload currently stands slightly above 78,000. Current active cases account for under 1% of total cases. But there is some more encouraging news around about the Omicron variant. One new study suggests there are reduced risks of hospitalisation and severe disease in people infected with the Omicron strain compared to people who had been infected with the Delta variant. This is South African research. It's yet to be peer-reviewed, but it adds to those studies we mentioned that have come out of the UK in the last 24 hours as well. And it raises some hopes about rescuing the upcoming festive season.
A South African study offered some pre-holidays hope about the severity of Omicron Wednesday. The study by the National Institute for Communicable Diseases and major universities, which has not been peer-reviewed, compared South African Omicron data from October and November with data about Delta between April and November. The authors found that the risk of hospital admission was roughly 80% lower for those with Omicron, and that for those in hospital the risk of severe disease was roughly 30% lower. One of the authors, Professor Cheryl Cohen, said, quote, "In South Africa, this is the epidemiology. Omicron is behaving in a way that is less severe." Still, the authors cautioned against jumping to conclusions. A study by Imperial College London released last week found no sign that Omicron was milder. Meantime, COVID cases appear to have peaked in South Africa's Gauteng province, one of the first places in the world where the variant surfaced. The NICD said that there had been a levelling off in 3 other provinces as well, though cases were still increasing elsewhere. It also cautioned that some of the lower case numbers could be due to lower levels of testing during the holiday period. While hospitalisation rates in the country have risen, they have so far remained far below the levels seen during previous waves of the pandemic.
Some citizens of Myanmar have gathered in a jungle to train with guerrilla fighters. These young citizens are taking up arms and are preparing to fight against the country's military.
Gunshots ring out at this makeshift shooting range deep in the forests of Myanmar. These civilians are learning how to fire live weapons as they prepare to battle a sizable, trained fighting force, Myanmar's own military. The junta staged a coup in February this year, ousting the civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi from power. Hundreds of resistance groups have since popped up across the country. Reuters managed to get rare footage of these young men and women, some former protesters who traded in their urban attire for jungle camouflage. And their numbers look to be growing, according to one former student activist turned fighter.
There are over 100 youths here. More people are coming to us. In the village near our camp, there are also many youths staying there because they are insecure about living in urban areas, or they want to join the army training camp, or for any other reason. They fled to the jungle and shelter in nearby villages.
Seclusion, however, has come with its challenges. Mud pots, waterways, and days of trekking have made access to food a problem. But the rebels still persist.
Everyone came here with their resentment and revolutionary spirit, so that is why they can only focus on fighting for revolution.
That fight may continue to weigh heavily on the resistance, as close to 1,300 civilians have been killed and more than 10,000 arrested since the coup.
Next to Syria, where a number of ancient sites have turned into temporary shelters for the displaced. The 5th century ruins and ancient monuments have become a popular and convenient place for people seeking home of some sort.
Mohammed Othman remembers going on school trips to ancient archaeological sites in Syria, but never imagined one of them would one day become his home. This site is called Sajable, and a Christian settlement dating to the 5th century. Othman and his family have been living in a tent amidst ruins near the Turkish border since fleeing for their lives some 2.5 years ago during a government offensive.
In the summer, we deal with scorpions, snakes and dust, and all other pressures of life. And in the winter, there is cold, and the tents notwithstanding the weather. The situation is desperate. As for health services, They're non-existent.
Rocks gathered from the site anchored down their tent, one of several dozen that are sheltering families who fled their homes during the decade-long Syrian war. A father of 4, he struggles to make an income depending on seasonal work such as olive picking and any other jobs he can pick up. When there's no work, he's forced to go into debt to provide the basics. These ancient ruins have been popular with the displaced because they don't have to pay to stay there, unlike other areas where landowners charge rent. Othman talked about how everyone there used to have land they would farm, while they had livelihoods in their villages and did not need anyone.
We were displaced. We didn't flee. Because if we'd fled, we would have gone to a better place, not a place that has been uninhabited for thousands of years, maybe.
There are some 2.8 million displaced people in northwestern Syria, with 1.7 million of them in sites for the internally displaced, according to the United Nations.
And finally, Extinction Rebellion activists have staged an unusual, perhaps, protest in Argentina. This protest is against fast fashion and climate change. Take a look. Thanks very much indeed for watching. We will leave it there. I'm Ollie Barrett. Do stay tuned to WION World is One. See you tomorrow.
Fast fashion drives multiple seasons throughout the year, generating a lot of waste of clothing that often is not even used. It also uses large amounts of water for its production. It is responsible for 20% of industrial wastewater and is the second most polluting industry, producing up to 10% of global carbon emissions. Emissions of these greenhouse gases accelerate the climate and ecological crisis we are currently experiencing.
From our studios live in New York City, I'm Susan Tehrani, and this is WION World is One.
नमस्कार। दिवाली की शॉपिंग और ट्रैवलिंग से जनता की गाड़ियों पर काफी असर पड़ा है। गाड़ियों पर डेंट, स्क्रैचेस और वेयर एंड टेयर भी देखने को मिल रहा है। लेकिन घबराने की कोई बात नहीं। गो मैकेनिक, भारत की नंबर 1 कार सर्विस ऐप टॉप क्वालिटी कार सर्विसेज पर आपको दे रही है भारी छूट। तो देर ना करें और आज ही डाउनलोड करें।
Book now and get flat 500 off. Go Mechanic.
नमस्कार। दिवाली की शॉपिंग और ट्रैवलिंग से जनता की गाड़ियों पर काफी असर पड़ा है। गाड़ियों पर डेंट, स्क्रैचेस और वेयर एंड टेयर भी देखने को मिल रहा है। लेकिन घबराने की कोई बात नहीं। गो मैकेनिक, भारत की नंबर 1 कार सर्विस ऐप टॉप क्वालिटी कार सर्विसेज पर आपको दे रही है भारी छूट। तो देर ना करें और आज ही डाउनलोड करें।
Book now and get flat 500 off. Go Mechanic.
Joe Biden, now the 46th president of the United States, has a full plate in front of him.
Afghanistan has been the heart of American military power.
In a clear warning to China, India's military has now taken control of the country for 1 year.
Made it concerned. It says that it's likely to miss by around.
What was happening inside the virology lab in Wuhan?
One ship was able to freeze global trade.
We want love, we want peace, we want equality!
There are
A traditional recipe, and it's really very delicious.
It's code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening. Wildfires, floods, and hurricanes. Extreme climate events warn of impending doom. Is the world heading towards a climate catastrophe? Watch WION's Climate Tracker weekdays at 12 p.m. GMT, 5:30 p.m. IST.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all if you fail to prove us wrong. God help us.
One trillion species. 7.8 billion humans. 1.9 million species extinct. One planet. Where are we heading? What should we do? Watch Climate Tracker, only on WION. World is One.